Today I wanted to share with you a little experiment that I've been conducting over the past few days. There's been a bit of a discussion in the Warzone community recently about the advantages of playing on PC with a controller and why do people do it. It kind of doesn't make sense, right? Well, the theory goes that if you use a controller on PC, you get all of the advantages of PC, but you end up playing against lobbies mostly made up of console players. And so I wanted to test this and see if there's any truth to it. But first though, how would you track the lobbies and figure out who you're playing against? Well, there's a website called COD Tracker, and this allows you to search for a player's name, see their stats, but also more importantly, a history of the matches that they've played in. And that's what I used to gather my data, manually counting players and which platform they were on. So I plugged in an Xbox controller into my PC and queued up for 10 trios matches with Phil turned on, each time entering the lobby and then quitting the game 10 times in a row. And then I did this again, 10 matches in a row. But this time I used my mouse and keyboard as the input device. I also tested some mixed input lobbies too with a couple of friends in trios and quads, because I know that people would ask if that made a difference, as I've heard plenty of people suggest that you can get into easier lobbies if you have controller players in your party. And then after that I looked on COD Tracker to check my match history and recorded how many people in each of those lobbies were on PC and how many were playing on console with a controller. I'm going to share with you the results that I got, and I think there's a couple of surprises here. And before we look at these, let me say that this is in no way conclusive and it's a very small sample size. More testing needs to be done. These are just my observations from 50 different matches. Also, I don't know if there are any other factors affecting this, like skill-based matchmaking or ping, so the data could be skewed because of that. Anyways, here we go then. So, in 9 out of the 10 matches I was playing with a controller on PC and queuing up for trios on my own, I was in lobbies heavily dominated with console players. Most of them had fewer than 7 PC players in. On average, that's around 5% of PC players per lobby over the 10 games. Very low. There was one anomaly though where it put me in a game with 52 PC players, still the minority there, but across the board it's obvious that there is a pattern here. If I used a controller on PC queuing on my own, it put me in overwhelming majority console lobbies. And before you ask or try it yourself, if you queue using a controller on PC, you can't unplug it when you're in a match and start using a mouse and keyboard. It doesn't work and it forces you to go back to the main menu and leave the game to change your input device. Or you can just plug your controller back in to continue playing. So Infinity Ward and Raven Software clearly thought about this and people potentially taking advantage of it beforehand. Next up, here are the results of me queuing for trios on my own, with Phil turned on with a mouse and keyboard on PC. 10 games in a row for a direct comparison, and it's 53% PC players across the board. That's 10 times more PC players per match. One of the games even put me in a match with 66% PC players. The story starts to change a bit with quads though, when I asked my friends to help, and we made a lobby that had 2 controller players and 2 mouse players. 6 out of the 10 lobbies had more controller players in. But you can see that 4 of the lobbies actually had more PC players in, but only just. So in this kind of lobby setup, on average over 10 games, 46.8% of the lobby were on PC. What if you shift the balance of a lobby into the favour of controller then? Does that mean that I had more console players in my games? Well, in this data set, I had 2 controller players in my lobby and me on mouse queuing for trios. This actually gave us about 56% average PC players in every lobby. And the highest with this setup that we saw was 100 PC players in a lobby versus 51 console players. And finally, what if all of the players in a party on PC use a controller? What happens then? Well, as you can see, it's an obvious shift away from PC. With this setup, only 5% of the lobby on average were on PC. And remember, that includes me and my squad. In fact, there was one match where the only people playing on PC were just us. Why is this interesting to talk about then, and why should you care? Well, of course, it's subjective and that's up to you, but to me, it's interesting because it throws up some questions about how this matchmaking works and what are the consequences of that. It appears that before anything else though, it will prioritize your input and speed. So then, with this knowledge based on that small test that I've done, I would say that if you play by yourself regularly and you're already good on a controller, let's say you've played console shooters for years or you were a pro player, whatever, playing on PC with a controller would be the most efficient and comfortable way to play. And a lot of people in fact already do this. So if you got 3 or 4 excellent controller players together in a lobby, all playing on PC with a controller, they would be put in an overwhelmingly console-based lobby. Why do this then? Well, first up, some people just prefer controller. That's fine. But if you play with controller on PC, you still get aim assist, the same as the console players do. Something else you get is a higher field of view, which means that you can see more. On console, the Warzone field of view is locked to 80 and can't be changed. On PC, you can go up to 120 and see just so much more. In these examples here I've recorded, you can clearly see how having a bigger field of view would reveal way more information on the screen and show you targets that you wouldn't be able to see on console. You also get high frequency 240Hz monitors and higher frame rates, meaning the gameplay is way smoother and responsive, and you get to put your graphics settings on low, so you've got better visibility. There's so many advantages to playing on PC with a controller versus a console player on a controller. It's a different world. What have I taken from this though, and what feedback would I give? Well, based on the games that I've played here and the results from them, it's obvious to me that there is heavy input-based bias with the matchmaking. If I use a controller, I'm way more likely to be paired with and against more controller players, regardless of if I'm on PC with all of the advantages that we talked about. But if I use a mouse, generally about 50% of the lobby will also be on PC, and the other 50% is made up of PS4 and Xbox players. The quads results though were quite different, and when looking at that data, if you've got a mixed input pre-made lobby, it appears to be attempting to evenly distribute the players across the board. 50% PC players, 50% console. And I guess with crossplay enabled, that would be the fairest way of doing it. However, there are going to be some anomalies. I've looked at lots of different match histories, and for myself personally, I've had a few games where it's 90% console and 10% PC, and I'm using a mouse. As such, sometimes in pre-made quads or trios, when you're using a mouse, you will get into a lobby dominated by console players, I would assume, because the matchmaking is having difficulty matching input and skill, and it starts to prioritize speed instead. And if you get into one of those lobbies and you're in a pre-made squad who are sick on mouse and keyboard, you will probably have a really high kill game in that lobby. As for the trios results, when we were all playing on PC with a controller, that's where I see the biggest advantage for those players versus a lobby of console players, because it's consistently grouping you together with them. Honestly though, I don't think this affects that many players in the long run, primarily because most people on PC are using a mouse, and Infinity Ward are definitely protecting their console players here by more often than not bundling them into lobbies together as best they can. But when you start to introduce crossplay in bigger game modes like quads, things start to get a bit more complicated and difficult to balance, so there will be the occasional bloodbath from time to time. As for comments on using a mouse, it would appear that once a mouse is involved in your party that you're playing with, if you're using it or someone else in your party is, you are way more likely to have a lot more PC players in your lobby, usually half of the lobby, and you will have tougher and more challenging matches. I would implore you to try this out for yourself though. If you've got a PC, queue up by yourself or with some friends or using controller, and see how the game feels. I mean, we've done it a few times now, and it's a completely different experience. Much more chilled, and the fights tend to be longer and more drawn out. Don't just take my word for it though, do your own testing and see what you come up with. Something else that barely anyone will be affected by either, this could have an impact on the Warzone competitions that are going on at the moment, because if you are in a squad all playing on PC with controllers, you'll most likely be getting into console lobbies versus other teams who may be playing in mixed lobbies or lobbies using a mouse, meaning they're going to go up against more PC players and have more challenging games. Could be something to think about. And with that said, that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one, and do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. With such a big player base, do they need to be that aggressive with this matchmaking? And could it be more random? Should all of the PC players be put in a lobby together as much as they can, even if they're using a controller? Would that be too unfair to the people who like to use controller on PC? Or maybe they could be competitive if they're a good player against people with mouse and keyboard. Let's hear your opinion. So if you like this one, leave a like, thank you, and perhaps share the video with anyone interested. If you didn't like it, dislike it. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.